You like yourself a bandana, huh?
I do. In my younger days and in the early days of this company, I did like myself a good bandana. As you can see now, I've swapped that out for the ever-present baseball cap. But this was actually taken way back in the day in Madison, and this would have actually been. And I think I'm actually pouring a pour of batshit crazy in this photo, but this is actually like one of the first events that we did when we were a brand new brewery in Madison. We brewed a couple of beers on like we didn't even like have anything brewed on the House of Brews system yet, so we were basically home brewing on our homebrew systems at House of Brews, and we did a beer and dinner pairing at this local restaurant, and that's where that photo was taken. So this is me just pouring out pints during the one of our first beer and food pairings that we ever did.
Wonderful. And just for continuation of the love of bandana. Oh, also, is the baseball cap a free supplier hat?
Nope, it's actually a MobCraft branded.
Okay.
Kind of hard to see with the lighting here, but
Yeah.
you can kind of see it a little bit better now.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a standard logo. No, I do have quite a few branded hats, but I figured I'd go with this photo. Yep. So this is actually one of
Another
the photos
bandana photo. Yes.
another bandana photo. This one's a little bit more recent, but as you can see, this is me in my natural environment. The lab is right behind me. So this is basically this photo was taken when we actually did the first round of successful isolations at the Franz Falk brewing facility. So this is basically they just wanted to take a photo in the background or to run with the story. And this is one of the first stories about that yeast isolation that came out. That was the photo for that. So
awesome. And yeah, very
action.
Yeah, more bandana
Still have
action.
that bandana.
Look, if you're doing cool ass shit like pulling ancient yeasts up and growing them up to make them viable again, you can wear bandanas and mug the camera like that all you want. Like and then our final photo, Andrew, please explain this picture of you in a grape field.
This is actually one of my favorite photos of all time. It's actually my LinkedIn photo. But this photo was actually
that's
taken.
Where I found it.
Yep, this photo was actually taken in Madison. So what's really cool about the homebrewing scene in Madison is that the guys in the Madison Homebrewers and Tasters Guild, they are really serious, and also just the homebrewing scene in Madison in general, everybody's very serious about it. Not so serious that they can't have fun because they have plenty of fun. But this photo specifically was taken at a vineyard that at one point was owned and operated by the local homebrew shop. So
what?
There's about a 2.5 acre vineyard just south of Madison, near Oregon, Wisconsin, and it's called Mitchell Vineyards. They grow it's a year-round pick your own grape vineyard, and they have all of the equipment to be able to pick, press, and make everything into wine that you want. And basically, you can just go there, pick grapes by the pound. They'll process them on site, depending on the type of wine you're making. You could basically, if you want to let it sit with the skins, you can take it home with you, let it ferment for a couple of days or a week, and then bring it back, and they'll press out the skin so that you can finish making your wine. It's just a really, really, really beautiful place, and it's really awesome to go through. And they only grow grape varieties that are Wisconsin hardy, so you're not going to find like Vitis vinifera. You're going to find a lot of hybrids. So there's a lot of Foch, a lot of Merlot, St. Croix. But they have tons of different varieties that are coming out of the breeding program in northern Minnesota. And so that's kind of where that's the story behind this photo. And it's still to date one of my favorite photos. And you can tell I was still working at Liney's because I'm wearing my Miller Genuine Draft shirt.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Definitely free brewery merchandise.
Yeah.
Well, that was a great idea, Brian. I hope you keep doing that when at the next cities and guests that you're going to have after Milwaukee is done.
We will. We'll have to see if we can find some funny pictures of next week's guests, and also cool. Shout out to the chat. That segment is now officially called Beer Googles.
I love it.
Great. Well, let's get into our second beer, and I feel like we should have a drum roll with all the awards that there you go. Thank you, gentlemen. All the awards that pHunk has received over the past few years. It's just this is not my first rodeo with pHunk, and I can't wait to open it up. Let's tell us more about it.
Alrighty, so pHunk, this is actually the beer that I'm most excited to talk about. This is, again, as you mentioned, it's one of our most award-winning beers. And that's one of the interesting things is when we moved MobCraft from Madison to Wisconsin, we had started experimenting around with sour beer at a small scale. And part of what we ended up doing was one of the guys that was involved in our very early homebrew sessions, he ended up going out west and started working at a brewery called Tahoe Mountain, which is now unfortunately defunct. But Adam, that's his name. He's our sour brewer. He's basically our head barrel blender. We ended up enticing him back because he's originally from here. He grew up in Mineral Point, which is out in the western part of the state. But he actually learned how to brew under one of the original brewers at Crooked Stave. And so that's basically how he learned all of the art of like brewing, blending, tasting sour beers. And so we were able to like bring that to the Midwest. And pHunk was actually our first like blended sour product that we released to the market. And we basically, Adam designed it in mind with the idea of trying to attract people who maybe don't like sour beers and try to attract them into that category. And so with pHunk, when we were first brewing this beer, it was all originally barrel fermented. Well, we tried a few different. So the initial version of this beer, when it was brewed, it was a combination of fermented raw beer and then barrel fermented beer that was fermented in 50-gallon barrels. Now, since then, we've gotten quite a few foeders in. So what we do is with how we produce this product now, we basically do a traditional Solera method. So for those of you that are listening that aren't familiar with Solera, you can kind of think about it as a sourdough starter, where basically when you fill up your foeder for the first time, you add your bugs and yeasts and everything, basically all the microbes that you want to be part of that beer profile in the foeder. And then once the beer is done aging and fermenting, and that's generally between 6 months to a year, and it really depends on what flavor profile you're going for. After that 6 to 9 months, you remove about 75% of the beer. You leave about a quarter to a third of that foeder full. And the idea is you put more fresh wort or partially fermented beer back into that foeder. And the idea is that last third or last quarter of beer that you leave in the foeder is going to help inoculate the next batch. And it also increases the consistency from batch to batch. So that's how this product is produced now. Obviously, it's designed to be light, golden, easy drinking, and of course, tart. And you can't really escape that with a product like this. So it's interesting because we use a combination of Bug County from, I think it's East Coast yeast, but then we've also used an inoculation starter from some Cool Ship brews that Adam has done as well. So this is a combination of like a wild and then traditionally soured, whatever that means, quote unquote, traditionally soured beer. So basically when this beer is fermenting, we know that there's Lactobacillus brevis in there, but then I can't tell you what other sort. We know there's Lactobacillus brevis. We know that there's Brett Brux, Brett C. But then beyond that, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we have no idea what's in there. But it produces a very, very, very delicious product. And award-winning to boot.
Yes, yeah, we should do that rundown real quick. This beer won a bronze medal at the 2022 GABF. It won a gold medal at the 2019 GABF and also took home a gold medal at the 2022 World Beer Cup. So across the board there at the two biggest, most distinguished competitions, this beer has won the highest of honors. And I have to say, this is one of, if not the best, single best sour beer I've ever had in a can. Not to, put down a package, but it's just not typically a product like this that you you see in cans. You think sour beer in cans, you think kettle sours, where you inoculate the beer in the kettle with lactobacillus, you let it do its thing, you measure the pH or the titratable acid, and do this very kind of specific method. And it's a quick way to turn around sours. It can be really consistent, and some people may talk down on it and say it's cheating. It's a tool to use in a brewer's repertoire. Funny enough, on this can it says no kettles were soured during the making of this beer, and it comes through fully in the taste. There's so much depth of flavor in this beer, and so much depth in that sour character that's there. It's akin. It's reminding me of Cantillon. It's reminding me of Goose and Lambic from.
And that's exactly what we're going for with this beer. And the reason why you see that on the label is that's actually part of an inside joke in the brewery, because our sour blend master Adam, he basically has told us he'll straight up quit if we ever force him to make a kettle sour, and he's just ideologically opposed to kettle sours. I feel differently. I think so. Let's take a step back here. One of the things that you love about this beer, pHunk, is the complexity of flavor, and that's one thing that's my big issue with kettle sours, is that kettle sours have their place, but they're never going to replace something like this, which is very much more traditional. Kettle sours, just in my opinion, tend to be one-dimensional, and there's nothing wrong with a one-dimensional sour beer if you've got like a specific product, a specific market, and a specific brand that works well for that. But you're never going to be able to get the level and depth of flavor that you can from a product like this, or frankly any of the traditional monastic Belgian breweries, or breweries that have been operating for more than a few centuries. So that is one of my favorite things about this product.
Well, certainly your point about brewing a sour beer, not necessarily for people who like sours. That's how that's how I got involved with being a big fan of sour beer, was really having a low funk at MobCraft, and it kind of grew from there. And I'm very glad for myself I didn't have a kettle sour first. I may have been turned off by the whole genre, but having low funk was a wonderful introduction.
Yeah, I can't get over how good this beer is. I'm so glad I saved my other one. I'm going to drink it immediately after this show. This is bravo. Cheers. I really like
wish
this
I could
beer.
claim credit, but I cannot claim any credit for this. This is all on Adam Thomas. He's our he's our only sour brewer and blend master. So we basically call him the barrel master around the brewery, because that's basically what he is.
Well, cheers to Adam, and shout out to friends of the show, Crooked Stave, for giving us another great thing. For training Adam and showing him the ropes before he could take off and really do this. This is I don't want to come off as waxing too much about this beer, but this is blowing me away. I will say this is my favorite beer we've ever had on this show.
Wow,
far and away. Like. So
that's 190 beers at least, if my math is right.
It's a lot of beers I've had on this show.
Well, I am humbled and appreciative of that.
It's so good. Wow. Let me put things back on the rails here. To continue talking about wonderful sour beer, just this past weekend, MobCraft hosted the 5th annual Sour Festival. Overall, how did the festival go this year? And overall, what does that event mean to MobCraft?
Right. So we just had it. It went incredible. What was kind of weird, and Ken, you may or may not be able to speak to this, but we got a bunch of snow last Friday, and it started snowing like early morning, started late Friday, all morning on Saturday. It was a ticketed event. We were terrified that there was going to be nobody showing up, and fortunately, the snow finally started to subside around 10 a.m. and the place was just absolutely packed. Like I said, we had technically 3 sessions, but there were 2 main sessions and then just a VIP session that started an hour early. So those were everybody that bought a ticket for that showed up, which was like a humbling experience unto itself because people were like, oh no, we're
It's
not going to miss
awesome.
this. So there we had a ton of people out. We also had a bottle shop set up. So the coolest thing about Sourfest is that basically there's two parts of it. One is the ticketed sampling session, and so we had 12 different Wisconsin breweries all showcasing and pouring sour beers that they had produced in addition to us. And then we also had a bottle shop set up where anybody who was tasting anything on the floor could literally go to the bottle shop and then buy like, you know, a bottle or a 4-pack or a 6-pack of whatever beers were available that the other breweries were pouring, including us. And we also did some special releases. So the other part of that was we just had our tap room open, and that was open to the public. That was not ticketed, and people could just go in. And we have 25 taps, and we normally have probably about 5 sour beers on tap. And on Saturday we had about 25 to 27 beers on tap, 5 of which were special tappings all throughout the day. So,
awesome.
and one of the best parts about it is one of the reasons why we started Sourfest was because it's like, well, we have this incredible barrel master, blend master. We have this incredible sour brewer. We have these incredible sour beers. We want to share them with more people. We want to basically get the word out about sour beers in, especially a place like Milwaukee, which historically has certainly lagged behind a place like Madison in terms of overall beer culture and appreciation. And so, I mean, that was kind of how Sourfest started. It was basically a celebration of sour beers and a celebration of that sort of culture. And so that was a lot of fun. I had a blast. I got to constantly spout off my favorite fact about sour beers, which is that sour beers are actually probiotic because they're made with the exact same bacteria that ferment cheese, that ferment yogurt, that ferment kimchi. So every time you guys drink sour beer, you're actually getting your daily dose of probiotics. So good for everybody on this call.
Shout out to Lactobacillus keeping us healthy.
Hell yeah.
Well, and speaking of sharing, sharing sour beers and sharing and sharing MobCraft. Now you're sharing MobCraft with our friends in Colorado, and you've got a couple more locations, a little more local, opening hopefully in 2023. Tell us about the expansion.
Yep. So we like many other breweries after COVID, we found that the status quo unfortunately just wasn't good enough anymore. And so we have pursued a strategy of opening up other brewery and taproom locations, the first of which was out in Denver. So we opened up our first location in Denver officially in November of last year, but we did a soft opening starting in August. And then we have a second location. We have 2 more locations, one in northern Wisconsin and then another one in Waterford, which is just southwest of Madison, or sorry, southwest of Milwaukee in Wisconsin. It's about a 30 to 40-minute drive from Milwaukee, depending on how quick you're going. So those are the 2 locations that we're in the middle of opening up. One of them, the one in Woodstock, is actually run by the city. So the city is doing a redevelopment of their courthouse. And so we're basically waiting on them to basically clear out so we can move in. We were initially told June. It looks like that might be getting pushed off until the fall. And then Waterford, we're just finishing up. We just finished up some demo in Waterford, and we're currently trying to lock down the last part of the financing for that. And so we should expect the contractor and construction part of that to start again, probably later fall this year. So I would expect Woodstock to probably come online sometime before the end of the year, and then Waterford, if not by the end of the year, then early in 2020.
And brewing in all locations.
We'll have breweries at every single location, yes. They won't be as big as the Milwaukee brewery because we run a 30 barrel, but we will be. That's one of our core goals, is that the beers that we have on are brewed at those facilities.
That's great. That's important to a lot of consumers. I would say personally for me that it's great when I know the beer is brewed on site, even if it's a big brewery that might have a 100-barrel brew house somewhere. If I know that there's brewers that are given flexibility to do their own things there, and that my journey to that place is going to include some kind of special beer experience that I could only have at that place, it definitely means something as a consumer.
Well, and not even as a consumer, but it also it's also a way for us to connect with the community as well, because that's one thing we want to do with the brew houses at these other locations is we want to do brew collaboration beers, not just with other breweries, but with other organizations, and being able to brew it on site and have it on tap where it was brewed, for us is a key thing in order to be able to truly connect to that local community, because we want to, a lot of, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in, but whenever, businesses are trying to expand, there's kind of, I guess, two ways you can look at it. You can look at it from a holistic approach of trying to be a part of the community, and then you can kind of look at it sort of from the less human side of it and more economic side, where it's like, okay, this is how much revenue we're going to be able to generate out of this location. And while depending on the circumstances, there's technically nothing wrong with either, I prefer to take the more human approach and we want to be involved, and we want to give back to the communities that we're being involved in as much as possible.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I have two questions to close out here. One, our typical closing question, but also a question for myself and my friend Matt G in the chat here. Can you save the dregs from this low funk?
Absolutely. The beer is not pasteurized. You can save the dregs if you like. I can't guarantee I can't guarantee what will have survived the process, so I can't guarantee what you're going to be able to get out of it, but you can absolutely save the dregs from that beer and you can produce something. What I would recommend is if you are going to use the dregs and try and build up a starter from that, awesome, great idea, please do it. If you're going to do that, be prepared for the long haul for that, because again, this product that we produce, this low funk, it's not a beer, it's not like a kettle sour where you can turn it around in a week or two. These beers take time to develop those flavors. So if you're going to try and grab dregs off of this can, expect it as a home brewer to take at least a couple of months to get something that isn't even going to be remotely close to what you're drinking in front of you. But I highly encourage it.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I might try to pull something and make a starter from the other one. We'll see. But before we wrap up here, Andrew, what is one thing that you wish Milwaukee and maybe Wisconsin at large was more well known for?
Honestly, I wish we were at least in these days and these times, I wish we were better known for our manufacturing. So my father is a trade, like he's an electrician by trade, but he basically grew up in Milwaukee industry when Milwaukee industry was in its heyday. And so back in the day, we had manufacturing companies all across Milwaukee. We had forges, we had Rexnord, we had all of these places that were building like oil drilling machinery. You have it's now Komatsu, but it used to be a mining plant, and they built mining equipment there. And Wisconsin still has very strong, if specialized, manufacturing capability. I mean, I listened to some of the podcasts you guys were doing with obviously Tim Pauly and Joe, and then Doc, and a lot of them mentioned especially Doc mentioned ProBrew out in Waukesha, but we have tons of specialized manufacturing companies in Wisconsin, and they're producing everything from stainless steel equipment to circuit boards to plastics injection molding. And we still have a very strong manufacturing base, but it's not like in the heyday like you have Alice Chalmers where you're employing thousands and thousands of workers, and it's not like those days, but Wisconsin manufacturing is still very strong. And also we have some of the best stainless welders, very important for breweries. We have some of the best stainless welders in the country right here in the state, and we do mainly because of the dairy industry.
No shade to any other fabricators in the United States, but the best
I will throw
systems.
shade at a certain state that claims they have happier cows, but that's only because they claim they have happier cows. But honestly, I would pit our stainless welders against any other welders from any other part of the country, with the exception of maybe like Ohio or Southern Illinois, because they have plenty of dairy down there as well.
Yeah.
But we just have a very strong manufacturing base, and like we even did back in the heyday when the breweries that made Milwaukee famous. One of the reasons why they were able to become famous, I mean, you guys talked about it on previous episodes. We had plenty of infrastructure, we had plenty of manufacturing, we had plenty of access to raw materials. We had access to iron and copper in the north of the state. We had plenty of land for growing agriculture. And so, I mean, that's probably the thing that I feel like is most underrated. Sure, we have a giant lake and we have some pretty great beaches and vistas. We've got that. Obviously we have a lot of tasty food. Obviously there's tons of great beer and other sorts of beverages and plenty of nightlife. And yeah, sure, people from Wisconsin are regularly disqualified from drinking competitions, but manufacturing.
Well, don't worry about those happier cows when they fall into the sea of the great earthquake. The Wisconsin cows will be much happier.
You said it, not me, Ken.
It's okay.
Learn to swim. No, shout out to Wisconsin manufacturing. Seriously, the things that I've seen come out of there, especially QTS Quality Tank Solutions, just
QTS was who built out our brewery. We had them. I mean, again, their quality is unparalleled.
The best. Yeah. No shade to any other fabricators out there, but the things that I've seen with Quality Tank Solutions and the breweries I've seen them fabricate, and the equipment and specialization and the customer service, like few other parallels in the world of brewing house fabrication. So I love that answer. As somebody that's a big fan, I'm a Pittsburgher. Hey, look, it took 45 minutes into the episode for me to mention Pittsburgh.
Great restraint, Brian. Great restraint.
I appreciate somebody that has fondness for the manufacturing heydays of their region, and it made both of these areas what they are.
And they're not gone either. Like I said, it's just changed. Like
adapted. Yep.
Adapted, right? Because most of the type of manufacturing that places like Pittsburgh and Milwaukee were world famous for at the time have now shifted overseas, but different sorts of manufacturing has ended up taking its place, and it may not be as well known or as publicized, but it's still world class.
Absolutely. Andrew, this has been an absolute pleasure. We could go on here. We haven't even gotten to the we haven't gotten too far into the microbiology nerdy yeast talk that I would love to bore everybody with. But before we get out of here, where can people find MobCraft beer? Do you have any plugs?
As far as where people can find MobCraft in general, outside of like places like you guys that do specialty beer boxes, really you can only find it in Wisconsin or Northern Illinois pretty consistently. So like you can find some in Chicago, but basically we're in Total Wine, Pick and Save, like Kroger stores basically, Otto's, Ray's. I mean, basically any craft beer bar in southern Wisconsin. Because as you get to northern Wisconsin, it gets to be more of what I like to call towny bars, which basically have Miller Lite, Bud Light, and New Glarus, which is insane because it's like every bar now in Wisconsin has at least one New Glarus tap, which is insane to think about. But everywhere craft beer is sold, you can generally find us, at least in Wisconsin for now.
Well, that's great. People go to Wisconsin, go drink more MobCraft beer. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us for the show. Thank you so much for sending out beers for the show.
Thank you guys.
It's been great. Ken, final thoughts on the month of Milwaukee.
Well, Brian, I was just, so pleased that we're able to highlight all the four breweries that we were able to do so. They all make great beer. We're going to be opening City Brew Tours, Milwaukee, towards the end of April. I've got some, middle of the month, we'll do some press. We'll have some friends and family tours. End of the month, we're going to be going live, and all four of the breweries on on our month are part of our tours. So I can't wait to bring people to MobCraft and also to Broken Bat and Raised Grain and Gathering Place and and a few other places. I think the people are gonna you're gonna love the behind the scenes tours and learning about the process and not just being on a pedal bus and getting drunk and driving and causing havoc on the streets of Milwaukee. We're gonna be a lot safer for everybody involved.
No, shout out to you and shout out to what you're going to be creating there in the City Brew Tours Milwaukee business. I can't imagine taking a brewery tour in a town like that has meant so much to the American beer industry and the beer industry all in terms of innovation and equipment development and processes and now the modern beer scene with these wonderful breweries that we featured this month, as well as the many other breweries that are located in Milwaukee. So before we say goodnight tonight, shout out again to our featured breweries for this month. Thank you so much to Broken Bat, Gathering Place, Raised Grain, and of course, our featured brewery tonight, MobCraft Beer. If you want to find out more about them or just follow along with their journey as they develop those new tap rooms, you could follow them at MobCraft Beer on Instagram. Thanks again to them for supplying beer for this episode, as well as for our beer club. As always, you can head over to bravana.com and check out the subscription options for the beer club, help support this podcast, and get beers sent to you monthly. Great beers like these. And then you also get the option to join the live show here and submit your questions live and just join us every Tuesday as we record these awesome episodes. Next week we'll be back with a new month. I'm just going to spoil it. We're moving right down the coast of Lake Michigan, and we're going to feature the largest city in the Midwest, and a city that isn't often associated with beer, but damn well should be: Chicago, Illinois. We will be featuring 5 breweries from the Chicago area next month, and we have some really awesome guests lined up and another wonderful co-host. So Ken, thank you so much for joining me this month. It was great. And
had a lot of fun, Brian. Thank you. And make sure you leave early. There's a lot of construction on I-94 in Chicago. This started last month.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ken. We'll see everybody next week. And until then, stay safe, be kind, and support local breweries, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.
Have a good night, guys.